Welcome to the Bookworm Duo, where we explore a variety of books. Let's get started.
I am so ready for this one.
Yeah, today we're taking a deep dive into a book that honestly feels like it should be sitting in the fiction aisle under, international espionage thrillers.
Oh, absolutely. It reads like a spy novel.
Right. But the author is very insistent that every single claim, every wild detail is documented fact. We are looking at The Invisible Coup by Peter Schweizer.
And I think it's important to set the stage for you listening right away. Because if you think you understand the current border situation, overwhelmed agents, humanitarian crises, Schweitzer is basically saying you're just looking at the symptoms.
Yeah, you're missing the actual disease.
Exactly. He's zooming way out to this massive geopolitical level. And he introduces this core concept right at the top, which he calls weaponized migration.
Weaponized migration. I mean,
Yeah.
that phrase alone sounds incredibly military. It sounds intense.
Well, it's meant to be. In security circles, the technical term they use is coercive engineered migration.
Coercive engineered. Wow.
Right. And the whole premise here is that mass migration isn't just this accidental chaos. It's not just about climate change or, poor administrative management.
Which is the usual narrative.
Exactly. Schweitzer is arguing that it is a deliberate, coordinated strategy by rival nations. He specifically calls out China and Mexico working alongside domestic elites right here in the U.S.
So chaos is actually the point. It's a feature, not a bug.
That's his thesis. The goal is to overwhelm the target nation's institutions, completely destabilize the society, and basically force a radical political transformation from the inside out.
Okay, before we get any further into this deep dive, we really need to address the elephant in the room here.
Oh, the replacement theories. Yeah.
Yeah, because the second you say things like changing demographics or, replacing populations, a lot of people immediately jump to the Great Replacement Theory.
Which is, just to be clear, widely recognized as a racist, white nationalist conspiracy theory.
Exactly. And we need to know, does Schweitzer touch on that at all?
He tackles it head-on in the introduction. He basically clears the deck right away. He explicitly rejects the Great Replacement Theory.
Okay, good. So how does he distinguish his argument?
Well, he actually critiques the creator of that theory, Renaud Camus, calling it just a Marxist rehash of class warfare that happens to obsess over race. Schweitzer says he has zero interest in race.
Right.
He frames his entire argument through the lens of Samuel Huntington's Clash of Civilizations.
Oh, the cultural values argument.
Precisely. It's about values and political structures. He's arguing that these rival nations are exploiting America's open society, right? They're using our own freedoms to insert their political leverage and basically dismantle the American experiment.
Okay, so the distinction for you listening at home is that this is a geopolitical strategy, not a racial one.
Right. And just as a quick reminder to you, our listener, we are strictly neutral here. We are not taking sides or endorsing these political views. We are just impartially breaking down the claims Schweitzer is making in the source material.
Exactly. We're just the messengers here to deliver the deep dive.
Yeah.
So to prove this isn't just modern paranoia, Schweitzer takes us back in time all the way to 1980.
Chapter 1, Proof of Concept.
Yeah, the Muriel boat lift. I think for a lot of people, this is just a historical footnote. Or, maybe just the opening scene of the movie Scarface.
Right, the Al Pacino connection.
Yeah. But Schweitzer treats this event as patient zero for this whole strategy. Set the scene for us. It's 1980, Carter administration.
Right. Jimmy Carter is actively talking about human rights. He has this open arms policy. And suddenly, over in Cuba, Fidel Castro publicly invites Cuban exiles in the U.S. to come by boat and pick up their relatives.
Which sounds like a humanitarian gesture on the surface.
It does. But Schweitzer digs into the intelligence files and reveals this was actually a highly coordinated intelligence operation. Castro called it the Attila Plan.
The Attila Plan. I mean, naming your operation after Attila the Hun doesn't exactly scream peaceful family reunification.
No, it definitely does not. While the docks were full of regular families waiting to leave, Castro used the cover of this massive boat lift to literally empty his prisons and mental asylums.
Wow. Just opening the door.
Opening the doors and pushing them on the boats. Schweitzer cites intelligence reports stating that Castro embedded roughly 3,000 intelligence agents.
Wait, 3,000 agents.
3,000. Along with violent criminals and people the regime just deemed, social misfits, he mixed them right into the flow of legitimate refugees heading to Florida.
That is basically an invasion force.
It's an absolute brigade. And the impact on the U.S. was immediate. In Miami, crime rates skyrocketed. I mean, homicide rates doubled in a single year.
That's terrifying.
The local health systems, the legal systems, they were completely overwhelmed. And the Carter administration was paralyzed.
Because they couldn't tell the real refugees from the operatives.
Exactly. Castro basically proved that you could use migration as a munition. Schweitzer actually uses the phrase human bullet.
A human bullet. Wow.
Yeah. Castro showed the world you can severely damage a superpower without ever launching a missile or firing a shot.
And the book claims this wasn't just a one-off trick. It was almost like a seminar for other dictators. Because there's a specific meeting he mentions, right?
Yes, and this is where the historical dots really start connecting to today. July 1980. The boat lift is barely over, and Castro flies to Nicaragua.
To celebrate the Sandinista Revolution anniversary.
Right. And he's hanging out with Daniel Ortega, the leader of Nicaragua, and a young radical trade unionist from Brazil named Lula da Silva.
Lula, who happens to be the current president of Brazil.
The very same. Schweitzer argues that at this specific meeting, Castro was essentially bragging about the chaos he just caused in Florida. He showed them the blueprint.
The lesson being, if you can't beat the U.S. military, you use their own borders against them.
Exactly. Destabilize them socially. And Schweitzer traces a direct line from that airport meeting in 1980 to the strategies these leaders are using decades later.
Which perfectly transitions us to our southern neighbor. Because Section 2 of the book shifts the focus to Mexico. And Schweitzer uses a very loaded historical term here.
Reconquista.
Reconquista.
Wow.
Reconquest. I think most Americans just assume the border issue with Mexico is purely economic. People want better jobs, better lives.
Right, that's the standard narrative we all hear.
But Schweitzer suggests there's a much deeper historical grievance driving Mexican government policy.
He really zeroes in on the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo from 1848. That's the treaty where Mexico lost nearly half of its territory to the U.S.
We're talking California, Texas, Arizona, New Mexico.
All of it. And Schweitzer argues that for the Mexican political elite, this is not ancient history. It is a very fresh, open wound.
But surely he's not claiming Mexico wants to send in the military and violently take Texas back.
No. And that's a crucial distinction he makes. It is not a military invasion. It is a cultural and political reconquest. Demographics as destiny.
Okay, so a softer takeover.
Right. And he pulls some pretty wild quotes to back this up. He quotes the former Mexican president, AMLO.
López Obrador.
Yes. AMLO literally told reporters once, and he did it with a smile, he said, "We Mexicans are reconquering our lands again."
I mean, for a head of state to say that out loud to the press is pretty bold.
It's incredibly provocative. And he points to the current president, too, Claudia Sheinbaum. She actually commissioned something called a migrant hymn.
A migrant hymn, like a national anthem for crossing the border.
Essentially. The lyrics talk about flying without borders, breaking through the fence, and carrying the Mexican flag in their veins. The framing isn't about leaving Mexico to adopt American values.
It's about extending Mexico into American territory.
Exactly. And the book alleges that the Mexican government is actively organizing this militancy right here on U.S. soil.
Wait, how does that work? Diplomatic missions aren't supposed to interfere with domestic politics.
Well, Schweitzer looks at the Mexican consulates. There are over 50 of them in the U.S., which is more than any other country has.
That's a huge footprint.
Yeah, and he cites documents claiming they are doing way more than just issuing visas or passports. He alleges they are organizing civil resistance, encouraging Mexican nationals to act as a unified political bloc to serve Mexico's interests, defying U.S. laws.
That reminds me of that detail in this section about the vodka ad. That really stuck out to me because it shows how mainstream this idea is.
Oh, the Absolute Vodka campaign.
Yes. For you listening, this was wild. Explain what happened there.
So Absolute ran an ad campaign down in Mexico, and the billboard featured a map of North America, but the borders were redrawn to the pre-1848 lines.
So California and Texas were just labeled as Mexico.
Right, and the slogan was, "In an absolute world."
Oh, man. I bet that went over terribly up here.
It backfired spectacularly in the U.S. They had to pull it immediately. But Schweitzer's point is that a major global corporate marketing team sat in a room and thought,
hey, this reconquest idea is so popular here, it'll help us sell vodka.
Exactly. It completely validates that this sentiment is real and pervasive in the culture.
Okay, so we've got these push factors from foreign governments. But a strategy like this only works if someone is holding the door open on the inside.
Right. You need domestic cooperation.
Which brings us to the domestic engineering side. Schweizer calls this section voter mills. And I was surprised to see he focuses on the 1990s, not the current day.
Yeah, if you were doing a quick summary of this book, this is the pivot. Domestic politicians realizing that immigration is the ultimate tool for permanent political power.
And he singles out the Clinton administration in 1996.
Specifically, a program called Citizenship USA, and he introduces a political operative with an amazing nickname.
The garbage man.
Harold Ickes. He was Clinton's deputy chief of staff. They called him the garbage man because he handled all the messy, under-the-radar political fixes.
So what was the fix here?
Well, the Clinton White House was terrified about losing the 1996 election, but their internal polling showed that new immigrants were overwhelmingly likely to vote Democrat.
So they needed more new immigrants to become citizens before Election Day.
Exactly. So Ickes and the administration put massive, unprecedented pressure on the INS to process citizenship applications at breakneck speed.
But when you say breakneck speed, what gets lost in that process? Security.
All the safeguards, they were bypassing criminal background checks, waiving the English language requirements, just ignoring massive red flags.
Just to hit a quota.
Just to get bodies naturalized before the voter registration deadlines. Schweizer details this completely horrifying discovery in Chicago.
Right, the hidden boxes.
Yeah, they found thousands of arrest records for applicants physically hidden in boxes in a basement.
Wait, like intentionally hidden by government workers?
Intentionally hidden, because if they processed those arrest records, it would have slowed down the citizenship approvals. So they literally naturalized violent criminals just to win an election.
Wow. If that's true, it completely destroys the argument that the system is just broken or incompetent.
Right. It suggests the system is being rigged on purpose. It set a precedent where national security took a backseat to electoral strategy.
Okay, so we've looked at Mexico and domestic politicians. Let's pivot to the other superpower Schweizer focuses on, China.
Ah, yes,
Yeah.
a Manchurian generation.
Right, that's the chapter title. And it seems like if Mexico's strategy is about mass numbers and geography, China's strategy is way more cold, calculated, and wealthy.
Very sophisticated. China isn't relying on people hiking across the desert. They are using money and legal loopholes.
Like the birth tourism industry. I mean, I've heard of wealthy people flying here to have a baby so the kid gets a U.S. passport.
Yeah.
But Schweitzer paints it as something much darker.
He says it's practically industrialized. He describes these massive maternity hotels in California, luxury complexes designed exclusively for wealthy Chinese nationals linked to the state.
They fly in, give birth, and leave.
Instantly securing U.S. citizenship for the baby. But Schweitzer argues the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP, views these children as strategic assets.
How so? They're just babies.
Because they take the babies back to China. They are raised in the Chinese system, completely indoctrinated in CCP ideology.
But they hold a U.S. passport.
Exactly. So 21 years later, that completely legal American citizen can return to the U.S. They can sponsor their parents. They can apply for security clearances. They can even run for office.
Like a 20-year time bomb.
And it gets weirder. The book talks about surrogacy and IVF, too.
Oh, right, the biological engineering aspect.
Yeah, CCP officials hiring American surrogates to carry their children. It creates this bizarre foothold of citizens who are legally American, but entirely tied to the Chinese elite financially and ideologically.
But the part of this China section that really made my jaw drop was the flight school.
Oh, Castle Air Force Base.
Yes. Please explain to everyone how a Chinese flight school is operating on a former U.S. Air Force base.
So Castle Air Force Base in California used to be a major strategic air command base.
Okay.
It housed B-52 bombers during the Cold War.
Very sensitive military infrastructure.
Right. Well, it was decommissioned. And today, a Chinese-owned flight school operates right on those runways. They are literally using former U.S. military infrastructure and U.S. airspace to train Chinese pilots.
Pilots, who might one day be flying against us in a conflict. That feels completely impossible.
It sounds insane, but Schweitzer points out it's entirely legal because of how open our market is. China is just exploiting our capitalist system against us.
Which perfectly ties into the visa loopholes he mentions. The EB-5 visa.
The golden visa, where you invest $1 million and you basically buy a green card.
Right. And Schweitzer claims this entire program was heavily influenced by a Chinese spy.
Yes. He tracks how it's been weaponized to funnel foreign money directly into U.S. politics. He connects it to prominent political figures. Terry McAuliffe gets mentioned, along with family members of high-ranking politicians on both sides of the aisle.
So it's not just buying a passport. You're buying access to the political elite.
Exactly. It's elite capture.
So to recap where we are, Mexico is pushing a demographic shift.
Mm-hmm.
China is playing this elite, long-term intelligence game. Domestic politicians are using it for votes. But how do all these disparate groups work together?
That brings us to Section 5, the Progressive International.
This is the part you said felt very film noir.
It really does. Schweizer starts connecting the dots between American progressive politicians. He names people like Bernie Sanders and members of the Squad with this group called the São Paulo Forum.
And what exactly is the São Paulo Forum?
It's a massive coalition of Latin American leftist parties, revolutionary groups, and unions. It was actually founded by Lula da Silva and Fidel Castro.
So we are back to Lula and Castro.
Full circle. Their explicit goal is to counter U.S. influence and dismantle capitalism in the region. And Schweizer argues that U.S. progressives have effectively allied themselves with this foreign coalition.
But here is where it gets really messy. Because some of these Latin American leaders have ties to, well, criminal organizations.
Do you mean the drug cartels? Yes, this is probably the most explosive claim in the entire book. Schweizer describes a convergence of convenience.
Convergence of convenience. I like that phrase.
You have the drug cartels who desperately want open borders for logistics and trafficking. And you have the political revolutionaries who want open borders to destabilize the U.S. system.
So they are completely strange bedfellows.
Exactly. The cartels have the money and the muscle, the progressives provide the political cover and the human rights rhetoric.
He mentions Gustavo Petro in Colombia, right?
Yes, the current president of Colombia, who is a former guerrilla. Schweizer points out the alleged narco ties there, and then he tracks U.S. congressional delegations visiting these leaders.
Right, shaking hands under the banner of international solidarity, completely ignoring the cartel money funding the whole thing.
Exactly. And he bolsters this whole subversive alliance idea by bringing up a memo from 1991.
Oh, the Muslim Brotherhood memo.
Right. It was found by the FBI in a basement in Virginia. It literally outlined a strategy they called the civilization jihadist process.
Which sounds terrifying.
The stated goal was to destroy Western civilization from within through sabotage and mass migration. Schweizer isn't saying the cartels and the Muslim Brotherhood are hanging out. He's saying they all share the exact same playbook.
Internal subversion. They all agree the American structure has to come down.
Yes. Marxists, Islamists, narcos. Different ideologies, same exact tactic.
Okay, let's fast forward to right now, the modern era. Schweizer calls Chapter 9 the surge, referring to the post-2020 Biden administration.
Right. And based on everything we've just talked about, you can guess he doesn't think the current border crisis is just an accident of bad policy.
No, he says it's the 1996 Clinton model, just put on absolute steroids.
Exactly. He details how the legal definition of asylum has been deliberately broadened so that practically anyone can qualify if they say the right magic words.
And he talks about NGOs coaching people on those magic words, right?
Yes. NGOs, many of which receive massive U.S. taxpayer funding, literally handing migrants a script.
Because if you say, I'm here for a landscaping job, you get deported.
Yeah.
But if you say, I am fleeing systemic persecution.
You get a court date 10 years in the future and released into the country.
Exactly. And the vetting process. Schweizer says it's been completely hollowed out.
Even for the Chinese nationals, especially for them. Despite all the security risks we just discussed regarding the CCP, he notes that vetting for Chinese migrants has been reduced to almost nothing, just waving them through.
Wow. Okay, there is one more major institution we have to touch on before we wrap up, and it's a very sensitive one.
The Catholic Church.
Yes. Schweizer dedicates a lot of ink to the Vatican's role in all this.
He is highly critical of Pope Francis. He argues that under this specific papacy, the church has aggressively aligned itself with these radical leftist social movements.
He mentioned something called the World Meeting of Popular Movements.
Right. It's this gathering the Pope hosts. And Schweizer's argument is that the church's involvement in mass migration isn't just about Christian charity or helping the poor anymore.
He claims it's a political act.
A deeply political act aimed at supporting a post-capitalist global order. And the kicker is the logistics.
Right. Who is paying for the food, the shelter, the buses moving all these people?
Very often, it's religious NGOs like Catholic Charities. And where do they get their money? Billions of dollars in U.S. federal grants.
So if you follow his logic, the U.S. taxpayer is literally funding the organizations that are actively dismantling the U.S. border.
That is exactly his conclusion.
Man, that is a lot to process. I mean, we've gone from Castro shooting human bullets in 1980 to Mexico's cultural reconquest to China breeding Manchurian candidates to this unholy alliance of cartels, U.S. politicians, and the Vatican.
When you lay the whole timeline out like that, the title of the book makes total sense. The Invisible Coup.
Because it's not a coup with tanks rolling down Pennsylvania Avenue.
No, it's entirely quiet. It's a war of attrition fought with demographic shifts, administrative sabotage, and legal loopholes.
And it's invisible because it hides behind this shield of humanitarianism.
Precisely. If you criticize the open border, you're called heartless. If you point out the demographic shifts, you're called a racist conspiracy theorist. But Schweitzer is insisting that fighting back starts with just recognizing the reality of the board.
Recognizing that it's a coordinated geopolitical strategy to permanently alter the political DNA of the country.
Exactly.
It definitely changes how you watch the nightly news. I mean, you have to stop asking, why can't these politicians fix the border? And start asking, who actually benefits from it being broken?
And I think that's the perfect provocative thought to leave you with today. If Schweitzer's thesis is correct, every time we sit around debating border policy as if it's just a domestic argument about jobs or taxes,
We are entirely missing the actual game being played.
we are bringing a press release to a covert war.
But here's something else to chew on, something not explicitly in the book, but that builds right off of it. If these foreign powers and domestic elites successfully change the demographics in the voting bloc, does the ballot box even matter anymore? Or does the administrative state just become a permanent, self-sustaining machine, completely immune to whatever the traditional voters want?
That is a very dark, very real question to ponder.
A terrifying thought to end on, but that's what we do here.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us. Subscribe for more bookish adventures and hit that like button if you enjoyed the ride. Don't forget to share the knowledge, spread the word.